The Lions have made another proposal beyond the getting rid of the automatic first down for defensive holding and illegal contact. This problem has been there. The first time it really was a big deal was the 2009 season, 2010 season, the year after the Saints won the Super Bowl. They had a far superior record to the Seahawks. They had to go to Seattle. Remember that?
I remember it even before
Seahawks,
that, actually. There was a 2000.
Well, there are examples of it.
Yeah.
There was a time where the Vikings had to go to San Francisco when the Vikings had a better record than the 49ers. The year after the Vikings beat the 49ers, upset the 49ers in the division round, they had to go back
88.
with a better record. 88,
Right.
They had to go back to San Francisco. They had a better record. I won a bet with someone that
Yeah,
years
it was
ago.
a weird year in the NFC,
way.
right.
There's no way that the Vikings had a better record than the 49ers that year. Oh, they did. It has been around, but the biggest example, I thought the most glaring, was the Saints, defending Super Bowl champions, 4 games better, maybe 5 games better than the Seahawks, had to go to Seattle and play in that beast-quake environment. And because the Seahawks won, everybody's like, oh, see, they were the better team. No, you play that game in the Superdome and the Saints are going to win. It shows you the value of home field advantage. So we see it all the time now. A team with a better record has to go on the road to face a division champion with a lesser record. The Lions have proposed eliminating those lines, the 7 teams who get in. And obviously you still get in if you win the division. But the seeding for the 7 teams that get in will be based not on division championship, but on record. So you could have, in theory, 2 teams from the same division as the 1 seed and the 2 seed. You could have, in theory, 3 teams from the same division as the 1, 2, and 3. It's all driven by record, not by who won a division. I don't think this is going to go anywhere, but I understand the logic, and I have felt for a long time that it is inherently unfair for teams that have had a better season to have to go on the road and play a team that was 7-10 and stumbled into a division championship because they were the best of 4 crap teams.
I hear you, all right, but we have a lot of instances in history where that team that we said's the crap team, they still win the game when they match up with the other team.
Yeah, because they get the home field advantage.
Well, all right, so let's go to this year. This year's a great example for all this. Where did the Vikings play their game in the wild card round? They were 14-3 against the 10-7 lowly Rams. Oh, they played at a neutral site in Arizona and got their ass whooped. Hey,
in my defense, the Vikings would have lost that game at home, too. They were not the better team.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Exactly. Exactly.
But the record...
Strike those comments from the court, counselor.
Wait, no. Don't you want those comments?
I do, but I'm talking for you now.
All right. But look, that's just one isolated
hold
example.
on. Let me
for every
finish
one of those,
here.
I can point to a better team that had to go on the road and lost.
Let me finish.
Even though they were the better team.
Well, you don't know they're the better. If they were the better team, win the freaking game, Mike. Well, now you're going to tell me if and whats and can't.
Then why does it matter where you play the game? Why does it matter where you play the game?
I don't know, but I know in those instances they weren't the better team or they would have won the football games. But you've talked about this earlier this week, and I don't like this rule proposal. I'm not a fan of it, okay? The way it is, I like it. I do think you should get rewarded for winning your division. Sometimes the schedule falls out in a way, just like it did for the NFC North this year. Oh, it's the best division in football. They're so good. Oh, my God. They were all one and done in the playoffs. Maybe none of them were as good as we thought. Maybe it was just the fact that they played the crappy-ass AFC South and NFC South, and it just inflated their records. And then there's the case of, the Rams were banged up early in the year. So it wasn't a true picture of what their team was. But at the end of the year, you had no doubt that the Rams were every bit as good as the Vikings, if not better. So I am not in favor of that because the record isn't always conducive to just that team is better. Things happen throughout the year. The schedule is a little different for each team, as we know, and injuries happen as well as the competitiveness in your own division. So, again, I know it's a good conversation. I get you there. But yeah, I like it the way it is.
You're onto something, though. You're onto something because if we're going to get rid of the divisions, because that's basically what you're doing.
Yes.
Why even have a division?
Exactly right.
If the division championship doesn't mean anything in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
You need to change the scheduling formula to have more games against other teams in the conference. If how you land in the conference is going to determine the playoff seeding, if your overall record is determining where you are on the playoff tree, independent of whether or not you won the division, there needs to be more conference competition. My point is, get rid of 2 games against the teams in your division. Play them once a year.
Yeah,
just go,
I hear you.
Just home one year and away the next year, and play more teams from the conference.
Right.
If
so
we're
it's
going
more
to be
equal that way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
If that's how you're going to do it, then that's what you need to do. I think it's unfair, but we just have to deal with it. There's a lot about the scheduling process nowadays that is unfair. The predetermined scheduling formula creates unfairness every year. The NFC West gets a huge advantage this year because they play all the teams from the AFC South and the NFC South. That's half their schedule almost. They're going to get an edge when it's time to figure out the wild cards because their schedule is far different and easier than the other second, third, and fourth place teams from the other 3 divisions. That's just the way it is. You got to schedule games somehow.
Right.
And the only way around this would be to basically have each team play 15 of their games against all the other teams in the conference and have 2 interconference games every year instead of 5. That's the only way to make it fair. So the Lions play every other team in the conference. The Vikings play every other team in the conference. And I don't think the NFL wants that.
No, you're right. That would be a better gauge of where it could all fall out. And if it was going to be that way, yes, I agree with you all the way. But I don't think the NFL wants that either. And, yeah, that's where I would keep it. I remember the first year I remember hearing about it and being like, wait, maybe this isn't fair. It was actually 2008. Do you remember the Chargers? They were 8-8, and they hosted Peyton Manning and the Colts, who were 12-4. And
yes.
I can remember that where everybody was like, "This is crazy. The Colts are better than the Chargers. The Colts should be hosting this game." And then the Chargers won the football game, right?
Tony Dungy's last game.
Exactly right. So that was my first inkling, and it was going to be an example. And in that year, hey, that same year, the 9-7 Cardinals, right? They went on the road and ended up going to the Super Bowl. We got a lot of instances of these teams with worse records making runs too, which just shows you the record isn't always tell the whole story. There's a lot of context to that. Schedules, injuries, age of team, whatever. There's a lot that goes into that.
Matt Casey has raised a point that has come up from time to time in this conversation, that there's a minimum threshold of wins you need to have to unlock the automatic home game as a division champion, or the gap between you and the 5 seed. If you're the 4 seed with 7 wins and the 5 seed has 14 wins,
whatever,
right?
Yeah,
if there's like 4 or more wins, it flips. I don't know. That's interesting. The problem is you don't want it to turn into a complicated exercise that people won't understand. That was one of the criticisms Sean Payton had of the kickoff rule. And see, we haven't talked about the kickoff rule today because the changes to that are going to come from the competition committee, and we'll be talking about it next week. But he thought it was too much for people to understand. Okay, so if it goes out of bounds, it's the 40. If it goes into the end zone and it's not returned, it goes to the 30. If it hits in the field of play, in the landing zone, and goes in, it's the 20. If it doesn't get to the landing zone, it's the 40. Right. Yeah, it's one. Let's have one number. If it fails to hit where it's supposed to hit, it's one number where it goes, so people can understand it. And I think that if they're going to do something, and maybe it's as simple as you have to have 10 wins. If you don't have 10 wins and you win the division, you don't get the home game. The number 5 seed takes, if they have 10 wins, the number 5 seed takes the 4 spot. Something simple and clear and easy like that could be possible, but that's not what the Lions have proposed. The Lions have proposed just getting rid of all of it and handing out the seeds based simply on record, whether you had 8 wins, 9 wins, 12 wins as a division champion. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be determined by record.
Yeah. I mean, I don't love that, as we know, and I'm with you. If they got to do it, there's just some things that got to be reconfigured and a little more well thought out to balance it out a little bit. But again, the current status of how it all is, I mean, the playoffs, the way the NFL has it, I am in favor of the division winner, right? Getting that home playoff game. I am, and I'm a little bit of a like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This is a good system we got right here, and I just think there's more into just the numbers and the record, like I explained. We've seen that. Whether it was the Beastquake game you were talking about, the 2008 year I was talking about, right? 2014, the Carolina Panthers were 7-8-1, and they hosted a playoff game. They beat the Cardinals to go on to the next round, and then they gave I know the Cardinals were wiped out too. I get that. It doesn't matter. Again, there's the excuses either way here, okay? But they go to Seattle and give them a tough game, right? But there's just a lot of things that go into that, and I don't think the number or the record should be the bottom line there.
I think that the more we focus on it and the more we talk about it, the more obvious it becomes that there is an inherent unfairness year in and year out in the NFL scheduling formula. This idea of we want to get every fan the opportunity to see every team over an 8-year period. That was what they stumbled onto in 2002 when they came up with the 32nd team when the Texans joined the league. They moved to 4 divisions per conference, 4 teams per division, and they've got this rotation now that gets you playing every team home and away over an 8-year window. There are years where it just works out better for certain teams. And, the best, I think back to the way college football was when there wasn't 25 teams in a conference. Like if you had an 8 to 10 team conference, back when the Big Ten was really 10 teams.
Right.
You play every team in your conference, and the team with the best record's the champion.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that because you've played every team, and you got a few other games, typically against patsies, but,
right.
sometimes against good teams. But that's the way to determine the conference champion, and it makes more sense because it's fair. It's the same every year. The point is the NFL's formula is not fair year in and year out. It really isn't. It really isn't. And there's a randomness to it that can create inequities based upon the quality of the other teams that you just happen to be playing in that given year when the NFC rotation and the AFC rotation, however those two meet, like for the West this year in the NFC, it creates a potential windfall and an opportunity to have a big year.
Yeah, I think it's a big reason, really. We probably look at it and go, there's 2 or 3 teams every year that come out of nowhere and end up in the playoffs. And a lot of that is, because of how the schedule shook out, and it was quite advantageous, right? So there's that. And then, you catch a few breaks along the way or play a team that, has got some injuries, and all of a sudden, I was a part of a team one year in the 2007 Bucks team. I wasn't playing, but Jeff Garcia was the quarterback, and I can remember just the way the schedule was set up. It was like, oh wow, we're in a pretty good spot here because of 2006 we weren't very good, and then we got in a rash of games where like the best player on the other team didn't play for like 4 or 5 games in a row. And it was like, wow, okay, damn, we went 4-0 in that stretch. Like, look at that right there. I don't know if we're really that good, but we kind of got a little lucky with some injuries and whatever else. And, hey, sometimes that's the way it works out. It's what makes the sport great. But, yes, there's definitely inequalities, right, in the schedule and how it's processed every year for certain teams.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.